You want this pen or that pen? Thank you. We'll leave that for Pete. Is there anyone else?
Sit down so you can stand up.
Can you pass it on to Matt?
By all means.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting of the Bridgewater Town Council to order at 7:30 PM. Could we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I could ask everyone for a brief moment of silence in recognition of those and veterans who have passed. Specifically this week, our condolences go out to the family of Edward A. Karamanika upon his passing on 1 February 2020. He served in the United States Marine Corps during the Korean War. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I want to first welcome our newest member of our town council, Mark Lindy. Thank you for putting your name forward and welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Just want to remind everybody that this meeting is being aired live over cable and it is being recorded. I'll entertain a motion to approve our minutes from our previous meeting.
Second.
There's a motion, there's a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? One abstention because Mr. Rushton was not here.
And Mr. Lindy probably abstains as well.
Oh, did you abstain? Abstain, okay. Two abstentions. Announcements from the president. Just want to remind everybody that about a month from today, our second meeting in March 24th at 6:30 PM, 1 hour before our regular council meeting, will be the annual State of the Town address, where myself and the town manager will give the town an update on some of the things that have happened and are going on in the town. So I hope everyone is able to attend. I think we're working on invitations to be going out to everybody. We do not have any proclamations this evening. Citizens Open Forum. I'll open the floor up to any citizen who wishes to come forward and speak during the Citizens Open Forum portion of our meeting. Anybody? Seeing none, we'll move on to appointments under E. We have appointment to the Open Space Committee, Maureen Manasian.
Motion to appoint.
Second.
There's a motion to approve and there's a second. Any discussion?
I'd just like to say I've known Ms. Manasian for a while now, and she is an excellent person to put in there.
Mr. Columbotus?
I share that sentiment.
Same. Okay.
I do as well.
Everybody? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Welcome to the Open Space Committee, Maureen. Okay, did we get to 7:33? I think we did. Yes, we did. 7:33 PM. 7:33 PM has arrived, and I'll open the petition P2020-004, new Class 2 Auto Dealer's License, Bridgewater Auto Group, Inc., doing business at 567 Main Street. I'll now
Mr. President?
declare, yes, Mr.
I
Souza.
must recuse myself.
Okay, I have declared the hearing to be open. Mr. Souza has recused himself from participating in this public hearing. I guess I'll refer to the town manager on this petition.
Mr. President, this petition is for Bridgewater Auto Group. They've submitted the applicable documentation for a new auto dealer establishment at 567 Main Street. Typical business hours, nothing odd there. They've satisfied all our requirements, so I encourage you to hear the petitioner, and if the council has any questions for the petitioner, feel free.
Is the petitioner here, and do they wish to speak on behalf of this license? Sure, we'll just stand up to the microphone and please just identify yourself for the record.
Absolutely. My name is Gail Chipatelli. I'm a real estate agent with Keller Williams. Mr. Derval, who's the petitioner, unfortunately had a death in the family and could not be with us this evening, so he has sent me in his stead. If anyone has questions, I will try my best to answer.
Thank you. Are there any general questions from the public that they wish to ask regarding this petition? Any general questions from the, yes, sir. Could you please just come up to the microphone and ask your question, please? Identify yourself for the record.
Hi, yes, my name is Keir Howell. I live at 572 Main Street, directly across the street from the proposed dealership. I do have some concerns about specifically like lighting. I know you said that they had met all these requirements, but I'm wondering what exactly does that mean in terms of, are there going to be, bright lights across the street from my house at, what hours and things like that?
You want to address that?
I can address, certainly I can address the hours. The hours proposed are Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and Saturday, 9:30 a.m. to 5 p.m., and that is what I can tell you. They plan on displaying 24 vehicles at that location, which is appropriate according to our building office downstairs.
Okay, those are the hours of operation. So then, would there be, any bright lights left on for whatever purposes outside of those hours?
I can tell you that there probably is a need for some sort of security lighting, but my assumption would be that there would not be bright lights out there. I can't tell you that for sure because that's not required in our as part of the state's licensing application. But if the council chooses to, it could condition the license to ensure that in the off hours there are no bright lights.
Well, I think, I don't know if the representative wants to address any sort of lighting. I think there needs to be some sort of lighting after hours, like you said, for security purposes, I would think. How bright they are and where they're aimed. Most dealerships, I drive down 24 after hours a lot, and I see a lot of lights on the left-hand side with the dealerships off of Route 24. So, I would think there has to be some sort of lighting after hours, just for security reasons, and they are pretty bright, the ones I see on 24. So I don't know how that would affect you. I'm not sure.
Well, when I bought the house, there were a number of trees separating my property just from the abandoned gas station that's there now. Are there any plans? They fell down in a recent storm. Are there any plans to put those back? They're like between the sidewalk and the road.
I guess I could answer that. I don't know of any plan to replant any trees at this point. I will add that for those that don't know this location, it used to serve as an auto repair shop. Prior to that, I believe it served as a gas station. It hasn't been used as a gas station in a number of years, but it has been used for auto repair up until a couple of years ago. So it's a zoned appropriate use, but I certainly understand the residents' concern about lighting and so forth.
Mr. Columbotus?
This is a question to the town manager. The this piece of legislation, the approval of the license we have before us, indicates that whereas Bridgewater Auto Group have complied with the requirements of the town of Bridgewater and the applicable state laws, inclusive of the zoning requirements, building codes, and fire codes governing the operation of such licenses. So, what are the presumably zoning requirements would speak to light overfill? That's a pretty common purview for a town to control spillover and height, and that's a function of pole height and direction and all that. So can we provide any sort of the butter's concern about could it be a 20-foot pole facing his house across the street, or does it need to be facing in towards the lot? Can you speak to what those zoning requirements are?
Unfortunately, I can't speak to those this evening. I can't speak to the zoning requirements specific to lighting. I can speak to zoning specific to the pre-existing non-conforming use, and I know that the building office has signed off on this, and I know that all the safety inspections have been done, and all the improvements on the interior of the building have been approved. But I can't speak to specific exterior lighting. But I believe you're correct. I believe the zoning code does have requirements within it about what's allowed and what's not, specifically designed to protect the neighbors and residents.
So this, the applicant wouldn't need site plan approval from the planning board, for example.
Correct.
Right. So that we don't have that control. So our only real control of this site and site conditions is it here and now, or if we approve this license and the owner tries to put up something that doesn't conform, we then have an avenue to shut that down. Right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Any license you grant, you always have the ability to not renew, but that's, as we've been through, that's not the preferred course. You always have the opportunity to have a license revocation hearing if there's an egregious infraction of one of the requirements under zoning, certainly.
Thank you.
Do you have any other general questions or concerns?
No, I mean, I think it would be great to put up some new trees. I know it's right on the border of West Bridgewater, and coming into Bridgewater, there's a really nice line of trees right there. There's a big gap right where my house is, right across from the dealership. I would really like to see those trees replanted.
Mr. Chase?
Would it be appropriate for the council to consider requesting the presence of the applicant at a more convenient time to discuss the lighting issue?
Do you think that, if I could ask the petitioner representative here, do you think it would make sense if we held this off, and if the petitioner could come at our next meeting to address the lighting concern, and if he does have any plans to put additional trees or shrubs up in the front of the property, or do you know those?
I don't think it's his plan to put any trees or shrub.
Right.
He's going to be selling cars. It would be my impression he's going to want to display the cars. So I don't think he's going to, as much as I completely understand the neighbor's need for that, I'm sure on his side, that wouldn't be the preferred course of action. Perhaps on the other side would be more appropriate. Mr. Dorval is very much aware of the fact that he's in a more residential than not neighborhood, and although he is granted this right, he certainly doesn't wish to be a bad neighbor.
Sure.
Lighting these days is much improved from what it used to be. I think what you would find driving down Route 24 is certainly not going to be appropriate for what we're going to find on Main Street, and I don't anticipate it being an issue. He's been super cooperative and worked really well with myself and the building department to try and get this through. So I would say personally, I don't think it's going to be an issue, although I certainly know you don't know me or him. He has no desire to be a bad neighbor.
Okay. I think we can move forward tonight, unless my colleagues object. Are there any other general questions or concerns from the public that are here tonight? Yes, sir. Could you please come up to the podium and identify yourself, please?
Steve Purcell, Bridgewater, 5 Magnolia Way. First off, I want to say that I think it's great that we're bringing new businesses to Bridgewater. But my question is, on that main road, there's not a lot of parking. And if you're going to have 24 vehicles that are going to be sold there, it doesn't leave a tremendous amount of space for customers to park. And so my concern was that if customers do come there, and there's a few of them, are they going to park on the main road?
I can address that one. They're not permitted to park on the main road, so they're required to have customer parking on their site.
If I may, I have a plan.
Sure.
You can take a look and see where his parking is proposed. So this being Main Street,
Right, yeah.
and as the managers just said, it wouldn't be allowed. That obviously would be a traffic hazard. So he's got quite a few, there's some parking spots over here.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm good
There
with
is
that.
right now an existing gasoline pump island out there from when it was being used as a gas station. That probably will be dismantled at some point. And I would envision maybe he'll move the parking around a little bit to make it, some more advantage, more customer parking, but he does have some.
Yeah, so, like, I guess that's the only, okay. so
That's a
we're there.
handicap
Okay.
spot, which he
All right.
needs to have.
Really? Okay. That's all for me.
Thank you. Are there any other general questions or concerns from the public? Any other general questions or concerns from the public? Is there anyone here from the public wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone here wishes to speak in favor? Is there anybody here from the public that wishes to speak in opposition to this petitioner? Anybody here wishes to speak in opposition? I will now open it up to questions from my colleagues. Any questions from the council that the councilors might have? Mr. Columbotus.
I'd just like to clarify this is a residential zone, right? But it's existing non-conforming, and use has not been discontinued for 36 months, and therefore it can continue. And it was deemed to be, even though it's not the exact same use, it's close enough to be deemed not more in violation than the existing use, right?
Correct.
So that's, I think that's something we should all be aware of. It is a residential neighborhood, and so we might be a little more judicious in approving this license than others. There doesn't happen to be a lighting plan on that plan.
There is not.
Yeah, okay.
No. It's not something we were required to do, and frankly, it didn't occur to us
Right.
to have one. Certainly a valid concern.
Right. That's all.
Any other, go ahead.
I just have to say, I guess at this point, short of waiting on this, we just need to, in my feeling, we just go forward in good faith that the applicant will be sensitive to the neighbors, and that, short of holding it up.
And that was certainly part of his plan in putting his business hours together. He's going to be closing at 5 p.m., and he is trying to be a good neighbor.
Thank you.
Any other questions from any of the councilors? Mr. Lindy.
If there is a problem with lighting, would we be able to, work with your client to ameliorate it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anything else? The time being 7:47, I will now close the public hearing, and I'll entertain a motion.
To approve. Second.
There's a motion to approve, and there's a second. Any discussion?
The trees are town trees that are missing, correct? So there's something that could be done from our perspective to help mitigate some of that glare from across the street. Just want to make sure that the town's aware of our dying landscaping. Perfect.
There's a motion, there's a second. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, this just requires a roll call vote. No roll call. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So that, congratulations, he's
Thank you.
got the petition. Good luck, and
Thank you.
if there are any concerns, I'm sure the town manager will hear of it and deal with it.
I will leave you my card. If there's any issues, I welcome you to call me directly. Thank you.
Okay, next, we have a petition P2020005, a pole location on Curve Street. I will now open this public hearing for this pole location from National Grid Verizon on Curve Street. The time now being 7:49 p.m. I'll refer to the town manager for a little explanation.
Mr. President, this quite simple additional pole is required on Curve Street to service I believe to service a new development which is going in off of Curve. And again, fairly straightforward, but I believe the petitioner can speak more eloquently to the need and the location than I can.
Is the petitioner here and wishes to speak on behalf of this order? Hi.
Good evening. My name is Simon Young, one of the engineers for National Grid. I'm not the one assigned to this project, but for the project scope, I know they're relocating this project because they are extending the road, building the road, and currently pole 6 is right in the middle. So they are relocating the pole to the side of the road, and there wouldn't be any intermission here. They would just be installing the pole first and then transferring all the equipment and utilities over.
Okay, are there any general questions from the public regarding this petition? Any general questions from the public regarding this petition? Seeing none, is there anyone here from the public that wishes to speak in favor of this petition? Anybody here wishes to speak in favor? Anybody here from the public wishes to speak in opposition to this petition? Anybody here wishes to speak in opposition to this petition? Seeing none, I'll entertain any questions from the councilors. Mr. Chase?
Thank you, Mr. President. If I may, I'm just curious. So pole number 6, I believe, is indicated on the map as to be the additional pole to be installed. Is that correct?
It's the one being relocated, so it would be removed.
It's being
and then-
relocated.
Yes.
And, but pole 6 does exist in a different location today.
Correct.
Okay. And so it's primarily being relocated in expectation of the need to serve the new development. Is that accurate?
Yep. The developer is going to be putting in the new road.
Right.
So it'd be extending off of the side of Kirk Street to the west. So they'll be putting in that road.
Which is the area indicated by the blank space, I think, to the left of the pole here. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions from the councilors? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing at 7:52 PM. I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
There's a motion to, I assume, approve, and a second. Any discussion? This does require a roll call vote.
Mr. Souza.
Yes.
Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Lindy.
Yes.
Mr. George.
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher.
Yes.
Mr. Rushton.
Yes.
Mrs. Loesch.
Yes.
Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
9 in favor, none against.
Okay. Thank you. Been approved.
Thank you.
Move the poll. Okay, now we have our third public hearing this evening under order FY 20037, in order of taking the property on Elm Street. This measure was not referred to any committee. It has been duly advertised in the enterprise and on the town's website for a public hearing and may be finally considered upon conclusion of the public hearing. So I'll declare the public hearing open at 7:53. I will refer to the town manager on the taking of some property on Elm Street.
Mr. President, this, as the council knows, has been going on a while. In fact, I think you had voted probably 8 months ago on an order taking that, because negotiations with National Grid took so long, we had to do again. So you've got in front of you an order of taking as amended. I will refer to it as a friendly taking. The National Grid did not want to grant an easement for the type of use that we were intending. And I can tell you that most of this, if not all of this property, is designed for we'll have on it two components of the Elm Street project. One is drainage, and the other is road widening. So it will allow the widening of Pleasant Street close to the Elm Street intersection. It will also accommodate drainage for the lower end of Elm Street. So those two reasons, that's why we are entering into this taking. The taking itself consists of a little over an acre. It's 54,278 square feet. Much of that is wetland. We've established As is practice, we've established a rate or a price value of $67,353.30. And that is not an appropriation you need to make because you've already made that as part of the Elm Street project. So what is in front of you now is simply the taking, which requires your vote, and then the town attorney gets signatures and then records that within 30 days of today, assuming that you vote favorably. It's important to get this done because the contractors are beginning to redeploy on Elm Street after a winter break, which doesn't really even seem like it was winter, but they are ready to go, but they do need this voted and then recorded. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any general questions from the public regarding this, this order? Any general questions from the public regarding this order? Is there anybody here from the public that wishes to speak in favor of this order? Anybody here wishes to speak in favor? Is there anybody here from the public that wishes to speak in opposition to this order? Anybody here wishes to speak in opposition to this order? Seeing none, I will open it up for questions from the councilors. Any questions to the town manager on this order? Land taking? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Well, I close the public hearing at 7:56 PM, and I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second. There's a motion to approve, and there's a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, this does require a roll call vote.
I believe you're going to want to adopt some amendments.
Oh, okay.
There were amendments.
Oh, that's right.
Motion to amend is indicated.
Second. So there's a motion to amend as indicated and a second. Any discussion on the amendments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed to the amendments? None, so the amendments pass. We already have a motion and a second to approve the original order as amended. And any discussion on that? This does require a roll call vote.
Mr. Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
Mrs. Loesch.
Yes.
Mr. Rushton.
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher.
Yes.
Mr. George.
Yes.
Mr. Lindy.
Yes.
Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Souza.
Yes.
9 in favor, none against.
I understand that there's also a lot of documents that we need to sign?
Not on this one.
Not on this one.
One's just a single document.
Okay, so there's a document going around that we all need to sign. I think there's a couple other documents going around that I sent out earlier that we need to sign as well. We do not have any licensed transactions tonight. Presentations from the Cultural Council. How you doing? Come on up. Welcome. Thank you for coming to our meeting.
Thank you for having me.
I'll introduce Mr. Steve Rogan, who's a member and I believe co-chair of our Cultural Council. And as is our practice, we try to get boards and committees in to give you a little update on what's going on and what their role is and how they're functioning, and a shameless pitch for members that might want to join in the community.
Absolutely. Can I give you a presentation if that's possible? No, thank you for having us here, and it's great that you're bringing the committees to the town council. I think it's great to let people know what's going on, especially committees that kind of like the cultural council, where some people might actually forget that we exist. But I think it's hopefully I can show you how important we are to the town of Bridgewater and what we contribute to the town, bringing arts, culture, but also economic vitality through all that as well. All right.
Bottom right-hand corner.
No, just, yeah, to get the,
Go down.
Oh, there we go. Where am
Over, over, over. Yep.
I? Thank you.
Done one of these or two before, Councilor George?
Done a Done a presentation or two, Mr. So,
All right. So once again, thank you for having me. I'm representing the Bridgewater Cultural Council, which is a local cultural council of the Mass Cultural Council. So, I don't know if you can go to the next slide. The Mass Cultural Council is a state agency that promotes excellence, inclusion, education, and diversity in the arts, humanities, sciences, and to foster a rich cultural life for all Massachusetts residents, and contributes to the vitality of communities and the economy. The council pursues the mission through a wide range of grants, initiatives, advocacy for the arts, communities, organizations, and schools. The local cultural council, which is what we are, is the largest cultural funding network in the nation, supporting thousands of community-based projects in the arts, humanities, and sciences. The programs promote the availability of rich cultural experiences for every Massachusetts citizen. And there are currently 329 local and regional councils that represent all 351 cities and towns in the Commonwealth. And what our roles are with the Cultural Council is that we are here to provide a funding list. The Cultural Council is granted, the Mass Cultural Council grants each municipality that's part of it certain funds to be distributed for grants that either individuals, nonprofits, organizations apply for. What we need to do is we need to publicize when the grant cycle is. When we decide and choose the grants, we need to publicize the awards. We ensure that the grant recipients acknowledge that they're receiving it, and so when they give have their program or their event, they need to acknowledge that they were given the grant through the Bridgewater Cultural Council. We want to be more involved with the local government, try to make sure that what we have, our knowledge and what we can provide increases access for the community and also the economic state of the economic benefits of the town. Go to the next slide. Our council right now consists of 7 members. Teresa Foley is the chair. Myself, I'm the co-chair. Kelsey Keefe, she's our outreach and social media. Stephen Sargent, secretary. Justin McCauley is our treasurer. Karen Peabody is a member, and Christina Montana is a member. Just one thing about our committee is, for a long time, the Cultural Council only met a few times a year for the grant cycle, and then for the, which would be for voting for the grants and distributing the grants. We now meet once a month. So we're becoming much more active, trying to create more programs ourselves and trying to encourage people to join. So right now we're at 7 members. We can have up to 22 members. So anyone who is interested in promoting arts, humanities, really just kind of like bringing life to Bridgewater, there's room for you. And just to note, the Cultural Council, we've been very productive. Well, most of us are very newly appointed in between 1 to 2 years with the committee. One of the things that we worked on with the town manager is we helped support a cultural facilities fund for a feasibility study for the town hall to be used as a cultural center. We helped to support this, and we were the only municipality to receive a feasibility grant. We received a $30,000 grant that was matching. So we're in the process working with the town manager on and at looking at that and progressing that project. It's really, we're really excited about it and glad to be part of the process.
So can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How far has the feasibility study gone?
We've worked with the town manager. We met with some of the applicants, and we reviewed the previous work that they've done, looking at studies, and I believe that we've a decision has been made to choose the recipient, choose the agency that's doing the study.
Okay. They give you a timeline on how long it would be before they produce something?
I probably want to direct that to the town manager.
As you can tell, and I'll speak for myself, I think others on the council, we're really looking forward to having a plan for the town hall. So is this something 2020, 2021?
I'd have to go back and look. I think they intend to try to get their work done in 4 months.
Okay. Well, let's get it going.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think if it was able to, personal opinion, if it was able to be used in that manner, right now we have Music Alley right next to it. If it was able to be used as a cultural center, just imagine having opportunities for that year round, having vitality come to the downtown.
No, I'm all for it, but we need to see a plan.
Exactly. Yep. All right. Some of the initiatives that we're working on right now is we had a applicant presentation meeting back in November where instead of just looking at a list of who was applying, we had them come in and present their programs. We had about 15 applicants come in, and it was a great way to interact with them, actually really see what they're proposing. Coming up in April, we're going to have a grant recipient reception in this council room. I will make sure to invite everyone here to that reception. The recipients will be here. There'll be some examples of what they do. It could be some music, some images. So like it'd be a good way to see where our money is going towards. And we're going to be doing grant writing workshops so that people who are interested in applying in the future will give them help rather than just having them go online and do it themselves. And I'll go into this a little bit later, the direct grant funding. Normally, the way that people are reimbursed is that they have to have the event and then pay for it, and then they get reimbursed. We're one of the first municipalities in the state who has chosen to do direct grant funding, where the recipient receives the money first so that it's less stress on them to come up with the money. All right, so next. Some of the things that we have to look at for what we for programs or what we're trying to give grants to: arts, humanities, and science programs, things that have a public needs to have a public benefit, and we cannot have non-discrimination. And the local criteria, which I'll show you in a few slides of what we're looking for to when we choose. So if you go to the next. So this is just saying local, we have to focus on programs that promote arts, humanities, and science. If you go to the next slide. Has to be a public benefit to it, which means it can be bring cultural vitality. A large and the second line says a large crowd doesn't need to be there. Nothing has to be a large event. It could be a small event. It could be an event at the senior center. Something, but as long as it brings a public benefit. And so if you want to go to the next slide. And whenever an event for it to be held, it cannot discriminate against race, gender, religious creed, national origin. It has to be, and also it has to be accessible. And then we have our own council priorities that we come up with and what we choose. Some are, our first priority is it's for individuals and groups that reside in the town of Bridgewater. Second is if the event is held in Bridgewater. That's what we choose from. Third, other events that are held in the local surrounding communities. And fourth, other events held in local surrounding communities where residents from Bridgewater will likely attend. So we're really trying to, instead of, because we get applications from as far away as like Lowell or Springfield, we want to keep the funds local. And also, with the money that we receive, we actually can use up to 15% to create our own programs, which is something that hasn't been done in the past, but as a council right now, we're looking to create programs within the town just so that we know what we want to bring to Bridgewater. Right. This is just a list of what we granted for this year. If you see on the left, in FY19, the state gave us $12,100 to grant. In FY20, we increased up to almost 15,500, which is great. It shows that there's some interest. They see that the programs that we have in Bridgewater are valuable, so our increase went up. And we have a good range of programs that are either humanities, science-based, or arts. And if you come to the grant ceremony, you can see some of these in person. Okay. General timeline for when recipients have to apply. October 15th is kind of when the grants are due. So during the beginning of the year, that's when recipients can apply, can get their program set up. They know that around October 15th is when they need the deadline to apply. We need to choose the recipients. We have to vote by the end of November, early December, and then early January is when we distribute. Tell the recipients who received the grants that they were successful. This kind of goes over what I was talking about before about how it used to be a reimbursement based, and now that we are in, if you want to go to the next slide, all these towns on the left, these on the right, these are the ones that are doing direct grant funding this year. So there's actually not a large amount. It's kind of it's a pilot program, but the main goal is to make it easier for these programs to get the funds and to get the programs going without any hang-ups. And I think it's going to be successful. It's easier on the council, but also it's more direct with our fiscal department as well. Okay. And this kind of explains a little bit more. I think that may be the last slide, but we're very excited to be more active, and really would encourage and want to work with other other committees for other events. It's been great to be part of the town hall, the feasibility study, and I think if anyone has any questions.
Any questions? Thank you. Mr. Lindy?
Just want to ask how we can help you more. I served on a cultural council before, and it was a great experience, and it looks like you guys are doing great work.
Yeah, no, I think, thank you. And I think this right here, having us come out and so that you can see what we do is great. If you ever want to attend one of our meetings, I think you can see that what we're looking at, trying to tie in what programs, and we work closely, like I've been working closely with the Historical Commission and trying to figure out like what programs we can do, what events we can do to promote Bridgewater.
Thank you.
Very informative. Thank you very much. Any other questions, Ms. Loesch?
I noticed that you said you had a social media chair. Do you have a handle that people should be following on Facebook or on Instagram so they can keep up to date with things?
I think if you go on, like we started recently, but if you go on to Facebook, I think it's if you look up Bridgewater Cultural Council, or if you just look up at Bridgewater, I think it's at Bridgewater Culture. You can we're starting a page where people can we'll be posting images like access to other grants, other programs, to any of the events that are going on. I think that's another thing that we'll do. Some of these programs that we are promoting, we want to make it so that the town is just aware of where it is and when it's happening.
Perfect, that's what I was.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Mr. Columbotus?
Thank you. Thanks for coming in. I guess I can't stop thinking about the town hall and the possibilities there, as some councilors may share. Does the Mass Cultural Council offer any support for making something like that actually happen besides, I realize feasibility study is always the first step, so you can vet it and see if there's public appetite for it and such, but supposing we do get the conclusion of this study is that, yes, we'd like to somehow make that happen, what does the state agency offer any support for the next step in that process?
I actually had discussions with the Mass Cultural Council, and I asked them directly. I said, if a project gets a feasibility study, what are the chances? Because they do feasibility studies, but they also do capital grants as well. I said, if a project gets a feasibility grant, what's the chances of it getting a capital grant? And they said it's very likely that they have faith in the project, giving it the feasibility grant. So it's much more likely to get a capital grant. And those capital grants, which I believe are matching as well, a local one here that the university's art building, they received a cultural facilities capital grant of, I believe it was like $2 million to do the windows and heating system. So if they have faith in it, there's a good chance that there's money there.
I think there's a music venue in downtown Plymouth in what used to be a church, and I think they got support also, and it's a kind of a pretty high level venue at this point. So it is, so there is money out there. So it's not the town footing the bill for that.
No, I think if we show that we're supportive of the project, and I think there's a very good chance that it can proceed. So.
Thanks.
Very good. Thank you very much for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the town manager's report.
Mr. President, I have a few items this evening. First of all, the Mitchell School update. Nothing terribly new there. My office is working with the OPM to generate a bid package for the demolition, and I believe that gets out in about a month or so. So we are helping them put that together. Otherwise, schedule 60% construction drawings are due by June 2020, this June. At which point there's another submission to the MSBA. Then later in the summer, we get 90% construction documents, and then an August 28th submission to the MSBA. And then finally in October, we'll have 100% design documents. And we begin the bid process in November of 2020. And then, if all goes well, December 2020, we'll begin construction, and last to July of 2022. That's still the schedule that we are operating under. Nothing has happened to disrupt that at this point, which is good. Again, I'll reiterate, total project, $80,600,000 is what is projected based upon cost estimates. Obviously, just so everyone knows, once the bid process begins and the responses come back, then we know exactly what it will cost. But what has been authorized is $80,600,000, $46,771,000 projected to be owed by taxpayers, and then almost $34 million to be reimbursed from the Commonwealth. So that is still what the numbers look like. No difference there. And again, anybody interested in reviewing all the materials, any and all the materials that the school building committee has been looking at, is welcome to visit www.bridgewaterschoolproject.com. So that's bridgewaterschoolproject.com. And everything, all the PowerPoints, all the projections, all the paperwork is housed right there, so you can go take a look at that if you choose. If you want to visit one of the meetings, they are generally held on the second and fourth Monday of the month. Check the town website to double check that, because there's some off months, some off meetings there, but that is generally what it is, second and fourth Mondays of the month, right here in the council chambers, and anybody is welcome to come. They're all public meetings. So that's all I have for the Mitchell School.
Mr. Dutton?
Yes.
I sound like a broken record when I ask this question first all the time, but I just want to make sure people hear it. The timeline you laid out is the fastest possible timeline we can be on to get this done, and a lot of it depends on us submitting things to the state, and the state saying, yes, you can proceed to the next step, et cetera, correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay, that's great, and we just want to keep pushing that out there, so I appreciate you letting me ask that question. The second observation I have was a very bold statement you made about the $80,600,000 that's authorized to spend on the project, and that we'll know exactly how much it's going to cost when we get our bids in. We'll know exactly how much at most it's going to cost, correct?
Yes.
And it will come in under or at that number.
If the bids do not come in under that number, then
No, I'm saying when we get the bid, which is going to be under that number or at that number, then
that's all we
it's
can
the job.
spend.
It's the job of the OPM. It's the job of the building committee. It's your job. It's the superintendent's job to make sure that what actually ends up getting spent is no bigger than that. And we're not going to come back to voters to ask for more money from the till.
No.
Thank you.
That's pretty clear.
Yep. Just wanted to put that out there too, because I've heard things around that there'll be overruns, et cetera, and we won't do that, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
I will point out, though, to your point about the timeline, and this is the fastest we can get it done. That is correct. And I will point out that since we built the last school, the process, the state reimbursement process has changed somewhat, and in return for providing $34 million worth of state funding into the project, the state does, and to their credit, they've laid out what appears to be a lengthy process, but it is quite a thorough process, and so we can be assured that when we begin and finish construction, that we end up with a building that is a quality structure and something that the taxpayers statewide will be funding through their sales tax. So that the state does inject itself a lot more heavily than they used to, but quite honestly, from my perspective, that's a better thing than not.
Thank you.
I added. I just added what I think we'll try to do a standing item, which might give me a little more flexibility in bringing up items, upcoming events and updates. I don't have anything for you this evening, but that gives me, as a standing item, that gives me the opportunity to tell you some things that are going on. If there's some kind of event that's taking place that, or if I know that something is coming up as an update that I want to tell you, then I will certainly give you a heads up in that line item, so to speak. Winter storm response. We had.
Can I just
I'm sorry.
interrupt there for 1 second? Ask the town attorney a question, because I think I know what the answer is, but he can tell me. Upcoming events and updates. I, as a counselor, could take it to ask any question I want and just say, I expect an update. Is that within the purview of the open meeting law or not?
Ask that question again. I'm not following the question.
All right, so what does upcoming events and updates mean? We have it on the agenda as an item.
Yep.
And so then, could
I
I
never
say,
reviewed that item. I don't know
could
what that item is.
could I say to the town manager, give me an update on,
No.
the price of tea in China?
No.
But the town manager can update us on whatever he chooses to.
I'm not. I didn't review that item.
Okay,
So
maybe you
that-
guys
that
should
might
get
be a
together
different-
and
that might
figure
be a
out whether,
different conversation for us to
whether you
have.
want to leave this on or not, because it could lead wide range for
Well, yeah,
interpretation.
I think it in some ways defeats the point of what we were trying to do.
Correct.
So
Thank you.
obviously, yeah, that's.
I think it's a much narrower focus than Councilor Fitzgibbons is suggesting. I think this is an opportunity for me to let you know upcoming, events, whether it be, ribbon cutting or, some sort of, social event down at the senior center or what have you. And also updates that I'll be bringing to the council at future meetings.
So then
it's not
I would
designed-
suggest, as we make up the agenda going forward in the future, that item B, you can leave the title, I don't care, but item B be considered null and void unless there's a B1, 2, 3, and we just move on from there.
Yeah, I mean,
There's no discussion under, I want an update on this, and then now I can shoehorn it in.
I didn't know the context, but if the town manager intends on giving you all an update on a ribbon cutting, that's more of an announcement. That's not a deliberation. That's not something that you're going to legislate. That's more of his opportunity to have counselor comment, right? It's equivalent to that. But if it's an issue that is going to come before this body, then absolutely it should be B1, B. But like I said, if it come to the parade, right? I'm okay with that, right? That doesn't fall in line with what I was talking about.
I just wanted to make sure we all understood what was going on.
Sure.
Did you have a question, Sean?
Yeah, well, actually, maybe more of a statement, but I actually took it as something that I know I've talked about a lot is in regards to giving us as well as the public heads up on events that are coming up. I would like to see the town's presence and our presence a lot more proactively in new businesses that come into town and things of that nature. And I think this is the perfect venue to give people a heads up instead of us finding out about it the day before, which normally happens. But I also understand the point in regards to keeping it very narrow in scope from that perspective. So that's the way I took it.
If it's announcements in that way, like upcoming events, that's fine. But my issue was always that if we're going to discuss things that we're going to ultimately deliberate.
Right, and I understand that. And I'm not making an argument to say item B now should be open season to ask the town manager anything. I wanted to make sure we narrowed the scope to say, upcoming announcements from the town manager or something like that, just to make it a little more clear rather than I expect an update on, because that's why we have all the other, that's why we have all the other items, because we're expecting updates on.
Maybe we call it updates from the town crier. Okay, thank you.
Did we beat that one to death yet?
You guys love coming back at me on that whole thing every time.
You kind of picked up on that, that's good.
I got it.
Storm.
The windstorm response. So we had, earlier in the month, we had a somewhat unexpected windstorm that caused power outages, and I think there were some concerns expressed, certainly on social media, but around town, that questioning, how do we activate our EOC, or how, emergency response here and there in different formats, and how we approach that. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to sort of answer some of those specific questions, but also give you sort of a sense on the EOC, what it is and when it's activated. So the Emergency Operations Center, EOC, is activated. When it's activated, is staffed by paid volunteers. I know that seems like an oxymoron, but paid volunteers and staff during what we consider major, what the emergency management director would consider major emergency events. So once that is activated, there are
We call them permanent intermittents, like we do with the police officers.
that sort of implies a lot more money than we pay to the volunteers. Anyway, once we activate, there are a lot of protocols and procedures that we follow for communications and emergency response. School evacuations, road clearing, debris, and all of that. So there are very specific protocols there. I can tell you that almost always the EOC is not activated unless the state has activated the MEMA's Framingham EOC. And the governor has declared a state of emergency. So it would be very rare that we would open hours in the absence of both of those. And I can tell you that because there is a fairly significant expense to us to activate the EOC. And if we activate the EOC in response to a declared state of emergency, we can be eligible for reimbursement through the federal government if the event reaches a certain threshold. We activated, I say quasi-activated EOC when we had a major storm event a number of years ago, and we didn't get reimbursed for any of the expenses associated with the EOC because we were about half an inch of snow short of what was required before the federal government will go to the president in order for the president to declare the state of emergency and then allow the FEMA reimbursement. So we are attentive to that. Obviously, if it's a severe emergency locally, regardless of whether or not there's a state or a federal declaration, we obviously would open the EOC. But within those guardrails, so to speak, we generally would not open the EOC. So, to give you an example of what might trigger an EOC, Pilgrim power plant incident might trigger the opening of the EOC. If we had a sudden catastrophic weather event or some other sudden emergency situation that required a long-term response. So those sort of are the guidelines under which we would open the actual EOC. Even in 2015, during the February into March snow events that we had, we did not activate the EOC because we didn't have prolonged power outages at that time, fortunately, and the police and fire departments knew where vulnerable members of the community were living, and we actually went home to make sure that we did either wellness checks or made sure that direct vent furnaces or hot water heaters were cleared so that there was no buildup of carbon monoxide. So that generally those are the kinds of things that would trigger an EOC. More specific to the windstorm that caused the power outage, we did get report from the fire chief, and he had been told by National Grid that the power would be restored by about 8 p.m. And so he serves as our emergency management director. So at that point, he determined that there was no need to either open the EOC or activate the shelter, knowing that power would be up and going. We also, just so folks know, when we have events similar to that, to the extent we knew, and we knew that would be windy, so we did have National Grid embedded right with the fire department. So when we have mostly major winter storm events, snow events, National Grid is right there working hand in hand with the fire department. And that's something that Chief Rogers started a number of years ago, and we have continued that on, obviously, with Chief Levy. And it tends to work very well because National Grid has a direct connection with their outage center so that they know and they can identify outages and send the fire department out immediately if that is required. In terms of wind event, I do want to point out that National Grid cannot put their employees up in bucket trucks if the winds are higher than 35 miles an hour. So in terms of a response, if it requires bucket trucks in the trees and in the wires, they have to wait till those winds die down in order to actually respond to those. They can respond, but they can't provide a fix most of the time unless the winds calm down to 35 miles an hour. In this particular event, again, the fire chief as well as the police chief the fire department and the police department have priority protocols that dictate that the first priority is vulnerable members of the community. So it might be the elderly, the sick, nursing home, and so forth. They also station a firefighter out at the housing authority to make sure that they are available to assist right there. So fortunately, in this case, we knew the temperatures were not below freezing that day, so that also factored into the decision not to open up the EOC or the shelter. Just as a matter of information, any of the prolonged outages were due to out-of-town transmission line issues. So those were more voltage, a little more severe. And again, the police department deployed their protocols as well. They staffed some intersections. I know there was a concern about the north end of the common. Police chief himself was in that area and assessed it and thought that things were going well enough there not to draw some of the staff off of other areas to put in that location. So that was about it. The last piece, interestingly enough, the generator did not trigger here in the Academy building. So I can tell you my job, my office, as you know, is right over there, and the generator is right over there. My job on Tuesdays at 9 o'clock is to make sure that the generator is testing itself. It has tested itself every Tuesday at 9 a.m. for however many years we've been in here. But windstorm on the weekend early in February did not trigger. So Brad, our IT director, got notification. He actually came down, opened up the generator. It started for him. He responded to a call from the police department or a notification that one of the police public safety servers had gone down. So that was a result of our generator not cranking up. But we've got the generator resolved, and we had been doing servicing on an as-call, as-needed basis, and now we've just set up a maintenance agreement just to have it done twice a year as on a routine basis. So that is sort of give you a little bit of background on the windstorm, but happy to answer a question about that one.
So George?
Mr. President, through you to the town manager. So in full disclosure, I wasn't here. But and you mentioned it too, I think where I got the most inquiries and feedback was on the common. I mean, the traffic situation with the lights is tough enough as it is without the lights. And I know that you said the police chief made the determination, but I guess where a lot of people were dissatisfied was around some of the high times, and there were just a lot of traffic issues. And I know that we go through sporadic power outages. I mean, Walnut Street's infamous for it, and it's gotten better, but it still happens, and I wouldn't expect, a police officer down there per se. But if we've got lights out in the center of town, be it the lights themselves or be it part of a power outage, I would expect to have some traffic guidance there. And not for the entire time, but I think, my understanding was that the power was out on Friday, correct? Friday is when the power went out?
I believe so.
Yeah. So I think most people had Friday as the time that they thought there should have been some sort of traffic control because of rush hour. People coming home, it's bad enough. So, but I appreciate the explanation for the EOC because I had no clue what the parameters were. But I think just for the general feedback is just around that and the being cognizant of the fact that if downtown is adversely affected, we just want to get people to and fro as safely as possible.
No, I appreciate that. Actually, the only thing I would add on the EOC, I just, there are a lot of volunteers that do, we do a drill probably twice a year. Certainly, we've been very religious about doing drills twice a year due to the Plymouth power plant, and so there is a pretty good group of citizens, CERT volunteers and other volunteers that lend their expertise. So that really allows it to be something, a reality in case we ever need it. So I do appreciate that, and I just wanted to thank those folks.
Mr. Fitzgibbons?
Yeah, this may be a little bit toward the town manager, but I just remind everyone watching at home that when there is a power outage and there's no stoplights that are working, every intersection actually becomes a stop sign, and you have to stop and wait. I remember that from when I took driver's ed all those years ago. So, in that situation, a lot of it can be patience. But the other thing that I'd pick up on Mr. George saying is one of the to me, critical areas, or 7 of the critical areas, although there's only a couple that really have traffic, is the railroad crossings at that point in time. You don't want a car stopped in traffic on a railroad crossing. And anything that the public safety team can come up with to, think about that situation and how do we make sure that those tracks stay clear is probably very important.
Point very well taken.
Anything else on windstorm responses? Appreciate the update. Next.
Town website. I think I've mentioned to the council some months ago that beginning in March, March triggers our ability to redesign and revamp our website. Right now, our overall goal is to simplify the homepage and make the homepage much more dynamic so that there's more flexibility to provide more timely information right on the homepage, and also there's a link to a 311 style reporting tool. So those are kind of the overarching goals of the redesign. But what I would ask is obviously the counselors' websites. I compared it to sort of buying a car. You can buy a red car, and somebody's going to say, "No, I don't like red cars." Then you go buy a green car, and somebody will say, "Well, no, I definitely don't like a green car." And so I sort of equate that to the website. I mean, everybody has a preference of the way they like to see a website work for them, and usually those are quite different. So what I would say to that end is, if any, certainly the council, feel free to reach out to me if it sort of necessitates putting together a ad hoc committee to sort of give us and our IT director some guidance and a redesign. I'm happy to do that. But certainly, folks in the community, if there are things that you particularly like or don't like about the way our website works now, then I would encourage folks to either call or better yet, email with some specifics to townmanager@bridgewaterma.org. And we will collect all of those comments, any and all comments, and hash through them as we begin the redesign process. But as I say, overarching is redesign the homepage, make information more readily available there, and also incorporate an information or a reporting tool in the website that can allow citizens to get on either the app or on the full-blown website and report whatever issues there may be going on. So that's sort of a very brief update. But again, feel free to, counselors have any preference, feel free to give those directly to me or townmanager@bridgewater.org, either way.
Any questions on that? Mr. Lindy?
Oh,
You were first.
You go
okay.
first.
I'm just wondering, the 311, is that like a see-click fix type of a thing? Where you? Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, I heard that out this weekend.
Through you to Mr. Dutton, when did we update the website to Civic Plus?
When did we?
Yes.
I'm going to say it was probably 3 years ago.
Okay.
I'd have to.
Was there a cost involved in that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's an annual cost to that. So the way that the contract with works is that you design it, or they help you design it, and you put it up, and then there's a several month period where you can make adjustments. Then it's sort of fixed. They'll provide support for you, but they allow within the contract they allow complete redesign. After your initial tenure, I think it's every 24 months or 36 months, something like that.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, next.
Parkland steward position. So this is a position that we've been recruiting for. We've had a very difficult time trying to find the right candidate, but I'm confident that we have found the right candidate. We have some final background checks that we are waiting on, and that letter of offer, if all goes well, will go out by Friday. So we're optimistic there. Our start date will be towards the end of March, third week in March, something like that. That's what we're targeting. So that's good news. And that will dovetail nicely with sort of spring and getting some of the trails cleaned up and getting some of the parks cleaned up as well. Senior center work. Senior center, we've had actually a lot, is a sort of a beehive of activity. Let's see, I'll go through the list of things that are going on currently. We've had a very active effort to recruit volunteers, which is what the senior center should be. It should be driven by volunteer effort, with Elder Affairs Commission being right at the top of the list. But we have had a really good response to our effort to increase volunteers. So we've got about 25% increase over last year. We had held what I think is the first veterans luncheon on site, run by the staff and volunteers. We saw probably 40 or 50 veterans attend that, which was great. We've started a new men's group. And I believe there are about 8 members now, but they're looking to expand. So if any men, senior men in Bridgewater looking to get out and do something during the day, feel free to reach out to the senior center and see when they meet. That would be great. We've been working on an external beautification plan with trees and some tree replacements and some shrubs. And also what Emily Williams, our new senior center elder affairs director, refers to as a senior playground. I guess these are quite popular, certainly in Europe, and are becoming more popular here. So she's looking to develop that and rejuvenate some of the trails through the woods in the back of the senior center, which were originally done as I believe as an Eagle Scout project about 25 years ago. I've also asked Emily to work with a Mitchell School project to see if there's a way to incorporate walking trails, around the new school building project. So it would be a really nice opportunity to extend the greater path, if appropriate, right around the school and then back into the senior center property. We've got a new storytelling photography project that'll be taking place this spring, and I think it's similar to David Moore and Bill Labossier's Hometown Heroes project, and I believe David Moore is helping out with this project as well. But it's designed to sort of highlight some of the accomplishments of Bridgewater senior women in the community, and Bridgewater State University is helping, I think, with some interviews and some photo shoots, and so it's a real intergenerational project that I think is going to be pretty exciting. Staffing has been a challenge. Obviously, we've got a new director. We lost a few other staff over the last few months, but we have replaced the part-time paid receptionist with a bunch of volunteers and residents of Bridgewater who want to be greeters and help with telephone support. And again, we're fortunate to have attracted a bunch of volunteers, many of whom are former administrators or administrative assistants who just want to keep active in their community, and so they're doing a great job. We've in the process or have revamped to some extent the Meals on Wheels program. We're offering more training to the new volunteers, and we also be integrating some GIS capabilities along those lines to help assist mapping routes for new drivers. We have a new Meals on Wheels coordinator starting on Friday, which is good. I believe that's going to be an exceptional hire for us. Inside the center, we've had the floor waxed, all the tile floors waxed, and all the carpets cleaned. We put up some new shades, so the building looks much better. Excuse me. We're working with Rob Cabral, our plumbing inspector, who also is doing some facilities maintenance work or coordinating for us. But we're looking to replace the cabinetry and the countertops in the great room, and then also incorporate a new shared refrigerator into where the cabinet space is now, so we can pull the old refrigerator out of the middle of that larger room, and make everything sort of appropriately place everything, and make sure that we don't have refrigerators in the middle of the usable room. In terms of transportation, I think the council knows we secured a brand new senior center van from Brockton Area Transit, and we have hired a new part-time van driver, and he'll be expanding rides throughout the town, picking up seniors and bringing them to meals and programs at the center. We're also looking to expand ridership by offering new trips to shopping centers or Market Basket, or social trips to museums and restaurants and so forth. So we're pretty excited about getting that going as well. One of the things that I was pretty adamant about when we hired Emily and Jed over at the library was we wanted to make sure that the library and the senior center were connecting and developing programs that could help their respective constituents. So to that end, they have started, the two of them have started new a new program which brings library books to homebound seniors that participate in the Meals on Wheels program. And that's a new program that seems to have been, so far, is a hit, and hope that keeps going. We also looking to expand nutrition programs, and also we're looking at capital improvements to the front entry, fairly substantial improvement to the front entry, and then also reuse of the rear parking lot for some parking, but mostly some open space and outdoor activity, whether it be a barbecue area or just outdoor sitting in a grassy place. So that those are larger projects that involve a lot more coordination, but those are on the list. And between the Elder Affairs Committee and Emily Williams, our new director, they will provide a fair amount of input there, and also some guidance on capital funding and fundraising. So Emily called me on Friday, was very excited. We had an anonymous donation of a sizable amount of money, which will be coming to you, which was very, very encouraging for the senior center. So that gives you just a very, pretty basic idea of what's going on at the senior center, and I'm sure the Elder Affairs Committee will be up in front of you at some point to give an update. So
The one term that I didn't hear you say, maybe you did, pickleball.
Yes.
What's up with pickleball? I thought we approved the appropriation and all that. I know there was some concern about the parking lot on the right-hand side and whether the school's going to need to cut through there, but where is that at?
You're right, I did not mention pickleball, I meant to. I think as the council knows, knowing that the school plans weren't finalized, we held off on putting down asphalt and doing the improvements that would be required for pickleball. Now that that we're fairly clear on where the school's going to be in the land that they're going to use, we've given Charlie Simons the go-ahead to organize the paving for the pickleball courts. Our challenge on pickleball, as is our challenge on some of the golf course improvements that have all been approved, is trying to find a contractor that will actually put down the appropriate courts and paths at the golf course. So I know they've tried to turn over every contractor they can find to even come and give us a price. We had originally asked the low bidder, the successful bidder on the regional searches bid to do it, and last April came. Whenever they closed the asphalt plants, I think it was late this year, probably December, and they didn't get to it by then. So I'm hoping Charlie can get in their ear early enough to get them here to do that right off the bat in the spring.
Is there going to be some sort of overhead? I mean, is pickleball an outdoor event, or is it more of an indoor? I mean, I've seen more indoor pickleball courts than outdoor. There's no shade there if that's going to be wide open.
Correct. So pickleball, as we're planning, is outdoor event, and we'll have, I believe, 4 courts are planned, and so that they will be outdoors. It's hard to provide shade. We know we've got some additional. We're going to have some additional funding, not only. Once the paving is done, and I believe we have money for the fencing, but there's some additional overhead or capital required for the nets and some of the other ancillary things. But we are just looking to push to get the asphalt down at this point.
That makes it hotter. That makes it hotter if it's asphalt. Anyway, we'll see where it goes. Any other questions, Mr. Gibbons?
Just to confirm, all the improvements that you're talking about, they dovetail with the way the Mitchell's going to be built, so that we're not doing something and ripping it up.
Yeah, we've been very clear The OPM, the designer of the Mitchell, Elder Affairs Director, myself, have all been in communication to make sure that anything we do is done in concert or is not done in conflict with anything that the Mitchell School is going to present.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Oh, Mr. Souza.
Through you. Mr. Dutton. We're making the inside look better. The floors have really improved. When are we going to do something about the water stain ceiling tiles? We have them, they're actually sitting in one of the buildings over there. We don't even have to buy them, we just have to get somebody who can put them up, which has been an offer already made by a guy who's a contractor.
I will ask Rob where that stands.
Put them up for free, since you have them.
That shouldn't be difficult, but
No.
I will ask Rob.
But as soon as you walk into the main hall,
Yeah.
they're the beginning of them, right there. And it bothers me every time I walk in that building. Thank you.
I will ask.
Okay, moving on. Thank you for that report. Again, if there's any items that you would like the town manager specifically address, you can let him know now, or sometime between now and the next agenda is available to contact Ann, and it will be on the agenda for our March 10th meeting. Discussions, we have none. Committee reports, there's none. Legislation for action, under item LA, Order FY 20045, the establishment of the town manager goals. At their meeting held on 2/14/2010, the Strategic Planning Committee voted 3-0 to recommend this measure with proposed amendments. This measure may be finally considered this evening, pending the adoption of the proposed amendments.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Approve the amendments?
Motion to amend as indicated?
There's a motion to amend as indicated, and there's a second. Any discussion on the amendments?
I'd just like to hear Ms. Loesch.
Perfect, I was willing to speak. So the Strategic Planning Committee has been meeting for a number of months, just getting through the review process, and we had stated in the beginning of the year that we were going to get through the review process and then get to goals as quickly as we can. And, you know, as we get better and quicker, we hope to get these done closer to January versus the end of February. But what we had done is look at the goals that weren't completed or were in progress from 2019, included them here, and the town manager actually presented us his strategic focus, which is the second half of that. So we're in alignment. The town manager got to review it before it got to the stage. So we're all in agreement for at least the committee and the town manager's perspective. So I hope all of you can support what we have here.
Very good. Mr. Fitzgibbons?
I'd just like to thank Ms. Loesch for her tireless work on this and really pushing to get this done. So thank you very much. I think it's a great document, and I'm glad everyone came together on it.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, the motion on the floor is to amend, and there's a second. This does require, no, the amendment does not require a roll call vote. All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So now we're acting under the main adoption of the order. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Motion and a second. That was
Oh,
for the
actually,
amendments.
We had a main motion. We can't amend without a main motion.
There's a motion and there's a second to approve as amended. Does require a roll call vote.
Mr. Souza.
Yes.
Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Lindy.
Yes.
Mr. George.
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher.
Yes.
Mr. Rushton.
Yes.
Mrs. Loesch.
Yes.
Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
9 in favor, none against.
We're acting under order FY 20046, road and drainage betterments, First Street. Finance Committee met on 2/24/20. The disposition will be provided to the full council upon receipt. Budget and Finance Committee met 2/25/20 and will provide their disposition to the full council. This measure may be finally voted this evening, pending the disposition of the Budget and Finance Committee. I believe the Finance Committee voted to approve this, and the Budget and Finance Committee voted 3-0 to approve this earlier this evening. So we can act under, we can
Motion
act.
to approve?
Second.
There's a motion to approve and there's a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, this does require a roll call vote.
Mr. Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
Mrs. Loesch.
Yes.
Mr. Rushton.
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher.
Yes.
Mr. George.
Yes.
Mr. Lindy.
Yes.
Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Souza.
Yes.
9 in favor, none against.
I believe there are a lot of documents we need to sign regarding this.
There are.
There are.
So you can either finish up and we can do it after, or you guys can take a
Yeah,
recess,
well-
whatever works for you all is fine with me.
We'll do it after. We'll do it right after.
Sure.
Next item, petition P2020007, annual town election warrant.
Motion to approve?
Second.
There's a motion and there's a second to approve the annual town election warrant. Any discussion?
I'd like to just continue my friend before Mr. Lindy took the seat's question. What if we didn't approve this, Mr.
I think it's highly likely the town would be sued if it wasn't approved.
Thank you.
Same answer every year.
There's your answer.
All those in
Tradition is
favor?
upheld.
This doesn't,
It says roll call in the bottom.
there's a roll call vote on this one.
Mr. Souza.
Yes.
Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Lindy.
Yes.
Mr. George.
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher.
Yes.
Mr. Rushton.
Yes.
Mrs. Loesch.
Yes.
Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
9 in favor, none against.
There should be a piece of paper going around for us to sign this. Have you signed it, everybody? Yeah. Old business. Turn the page here. We have ordinance FY 20004, general ordinance, amend ordinance D 2012-014, right to farm ordinance. At their meeting held on 1/17/2020, the Community and Economic Development Committee voted 3-0 not to recommend this measure. If the council wishes to move forward with adoption, this measure would require advertising.
Motion to table?
Second.
There's a motion to table and there's a second. Any discussion?
Mr.
Just
President, is that an indefinite tabling?
I guess the question I have clarification is tabling this, what does it mean?
It essentially places it indefinitely tabled, yes.
And how would it get brought back?
It would have to be brought back by someone, some new sponsor as a new ordinance, essentially, and have to go back through the process.
So tabling it pretty much
Pretty much kills it.
kills it
without a no vote.
as written under this ordinance. Mr. Souza?
Well, that's, for reasons I don't want to discuss this evening, I went to that meeting, I asked them what we could do to withdraw that, and they said, we'll vote against it and send it to the council. That's why it's here as is.
Okay. Okay, so there's a motion, to Mr. Columbotus.
But if we didn't table it and voted it down, it couldn't come back up for a period, is that right?
For 6 months.
Right.
That is
So,
correct.
By tabling it, it could come back next week.
That is correct.
So there's a motion, there's a second to table it. Any further discussion? All those in favor of tabling it?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No?
So it's 7-2 to table it. Ordinance FY 20005, General Ordinance Commercial Parking Licensing. Rules and Procedures Committee meet 2/24/20 and will provide their disposition to the full council. So what's the rule and procedure?
So we voted 3-0 to recommend passing this. The discussion that we had, one particular part for clarification is, within the ordinance says the town manager by regulation shall establish a fee for licensure, which shall not exceed $100 per year. That's the cap. So I think the way I've been approaching it, and I think if the town manager disagrees, he could voice it, is this is not to generate revenue. This is to put an ordinance in place to be able to establish commercial parking, but also enforce it for safety reasons. Now, if someone came along and wanted to open up a 150 parking lot commercial parking, then the town manager would have the capability of charging them $100. But I think for the most part, what we're looking at is a very nominal fee, but more importantly, having something in place for safety.
Okay, there's a motion. Mr. Fitzgibbons? Yeah.
I didn't hear a motion, but I'll make a motion to send to advertising for discussion.
Second.
There's a motion to send this to advertising, and there's a second for discussion. Further discussion, Mr. Fitzgibbons?
Yeah. If somebody decided, this is to the town manager, if somebody decided to open up the lot that Mr. George envisioned of 150, commercial lot, so to speak, that would be paying property taxes on the value of the business that's being run there, right?
If you were opening up a permanent lot.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. No, so it's not just the $100 that we'd be getting. I guess that was my point. We'd be getting the property taxes as well. And I can't think of a less strenuous business on public safety than just having a parking lot, which is great. I mean, not that I want one. But, yeah, so we don't need any amendments. Everyone was cool with that in the committee. No one, because I don't want to send it to advertising.
Nope, that's correct,
Yeah.
as
And-
presented.
Yeah, that's my only thing. All right, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion and there's a second to send it to advertising. Mr. Columbotus?
Through you, Mr. President, to Mr. Dutton. Mr. Dutton, does our zoning code speak to parking lots at all?
It does, and Jennifer Burke obviously reviewed this, drafted most of it, and so I'm going to suggest that this can coexist with whatever zoning. I mean, this doesn't, just because there's a licensing procedure doesn't negate the need to make sure that it's zoned, that the proposed activity meets zoning, so that's obviously the first threshold.
So this legislation gives you, essentially, gives you authority to regulate, to control, to some measure of control, whereas you really didn't have much before.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rushton?
Could I just ask, in case I'm missing this, shouldn't there be a limit on this license? For example, it would expire within 48 hours? Because the way I read this, I'd just apply for this once and I could open up the mobile lot for the entire year.
Correct.
Maybe we could offer an amendment to this?
This, well, let me just, back up, just to make sure that everyone understands. So, this would be for a commercial paid parking venture. So if somebody, as Councilor Fitzgibbons pointed out, if somebody came in and proposed improving, their lot that otherwise satisfied zoning, and put paid parking on that lot, and it was intended to be long-term. Right now, we have effectively no licensing procedure for that at all. So that we didn't see that there was necessarily a need at this point, at this juncture, to create a difference between what I think Councilor George was aiming to solve, which is the temporary, lot, at one-day event lot, and the long-term. I think our attempt was to make sure that we were as broad as possible at this stage. That doesn't mean that something, wouldn't trigger narrowing down the nature of the proposed ordinance later.
I think we're on the same page. I just want to make sure it was meeting the original objective of what Councilor George was looking for. So if in fact they didn't apply for a permit in this situation, we found the lot to have cars, and this amendment is passed and adopted, the town of Bridgewater Police would invoke this Chapter 40 in order to close the lot during the event.
They could.
Okay.
They also have the power to issue, under this section of the general ordinances, they do have the authority to issue a fine.
Okay. All right, just want to make sure. Thanks.
So if a scenario like that, then, how are the property owners that want to do this going to know that this is even in effect? It's going to be difficult, so,
Well, I would say they would know it in the same way that they should know if they're going to have a yard sale, they need to have a permit.
And I
It'd be a
don't,
learning curve of probably the first couple
exactly.
years.
And to the extent that no, as Councilor George pointed out, we're not going to charge $100, you know, it's going to be a $10, and our sole purpose is a public safety purpose. We just want to know where they are and be able to control it if it's going to cause a dangerous situation either on a sidewalk or in the roadway. So that's the public purpose here. But we certainly aren't intending to go out and shut people down the first year. Well, it's an educational opportunity for some education.
Any other discussion? Mr. Columbotus?
I just want to point out one point in the enabling language. It says the town manager shall establish a fee for licensure which shall not exceed $100 per year and criteria for the issuance of a license. So this essentially gives the town manager the authority to create terms and conditions by which someone would get a license. It kind of leaves that administration up to him, but it does give him that authority to set terms for the issuance of a license. So that's where the control comes in.
I mean, other than the university graduation, I don't know of any other events in town where
4th of July.
is paid. Usually it's,
Portuguese Fiesta
but I don't know if it's paid. I think they
across the street.
Yeah, they charge.
They charge
about $5 a car.
Any other discussion? Is there a motion to send this to advertising?
There was.
There was, and there's a second. That was discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Sent to advertising. We'll see this again on March 10th. Final ordinance FY 20008, general ordinance, rescind ordinance 2012-004, administration and fiduciary oversight of the budget, referencing ambulance receipts. Finance Committee met 2/24/20. The disposition will be provided to the full council upon receipt. The Budget and Finance Committee meet 2/25/20 and will provide their disposition to the full council. This measure may not be finally voted this evening as it requires advertising, pending disposition from the Budget and Finance Committees. My understanding is the Finance Committee met last evening they met last evening, but they did not act on this. They requested more information, so we do not have a vote of the Finance Committee. The Budget and Finance Committee did vote this earlier, so we cannot take action on this evening. So we will see this again on March 10th. New business, we have order FY 20047, a CPC transfer, Legion Field fencing. I'll refer to the town manager if he wants to give a brief explanation, or we can refer it right out to committee.
I'll give a very brief update on this. This is a request from Parks and Recreation. They've requested fencing to adjoin, I believe, the new dugouts in order to make sure that kids are safe behind those new dugouts. And the total price on it is $27,500. That comes to you only because it was recommended by the Community Preservation Committee.
Motion to refer to the Budget and Finance Committees.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to refer it out. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Citizens' comments. Are there any citizens here that wish to speak during the citizens' comments portion of our meeting? Anybody at all wish to speak during the citizens' comments portion of our meeting? Seeing none, I will go to council comments, beginning on my far right with Councilor Souza.
Yes, I have something this evening. SAVE, S-A-V-E. What does it mean? Senior Associates Volunteer Experience. Opportunity for seniors to volunteer time at the senior center, and there are 5 openings right now, and earn up to $1,500 credit toward their taxes. So if you have a little spare time and you want to volunteer up at the service, you will be paid through to reduce your taxes on your real estate. If you're interested in any of the positions, there are 5 open. Go up there and talk to them. Thank you.
Mr. Chase?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a reminder that the state presidential primary election is scheduled to take place on March 3rd, and early voting is now underway in this very room, just not at this moment. But for anyone who might find it more convenient than to wait for the actual election day, I would certainly encourage you to take advantage of that. And if I may, just to continue on the senior theme for just a moment, I received a brochure from Bridgewater State University announcing many courses in their senior college. And a couple of items were of interest to me, and I took advantage of that. So I've registered for a couple of these mini courses, mini 6-week courses, just 1 day per week. But what I thought was terrific about it is that a couple of things. Certainly the offerings are very interesting. I found that the registration fee is extremely modest. I think it's a $55 fee that pays for up to 3 courses. And the actual sessions are held in our town library. So it was something I wanted to just make mention of.
Very good.
I couldn't hear you
Mr.
because
Lindy?
you were so far away from the microphone.
I just wanted to kind of piggyback on the town manager's report before on the senior center. I had the opportunity to go over there and volunteer once for Meals on Wheels as a fill-in. It was a great experience, and just the energy and enthusiasm over there is phenomenal. And also, I got a chance to meet the library director during his open office hours. You know, being very involved in libraries in the past, I wanted to go over there. I'm spending a little time over there. It's a great library, and the folks are great. So, thank you.
Mr. George?
I'm all set, thank you.
Mr. Rushton?
Comments?
Ms. Loesch?
Nope, thank you.
Mr. Columbotus?
Nothing tonight.
Mr. Fitzgibbons?
I hate to
Streak.
break up the streak. No, I just want to wish all the Bridgewater Rainham teams competing in postseason action for the winter season good luck in the next upcoming days.
And that concludes our meeting for this evening. We do not have executive session this evening, so we will meet again on March 10th. I'll entertain a
I
motion.
move to adjourn.
Second.
A second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. And we have